There's a quiet voice that speaks inside your head. You know it well. It narrates your days, comments on every decision, and whispers warnings when no one else is around. Sometimes it sounds like reason, sometimes it sounds like fear, and sometimes it's so convincing that you forget it isn't you at all. But here's the unsettling truth. Your thoughts lie, not because they mean to deceive you, but because they were never built to tell the truth. They were built to protect you, to filter reality through the narrow lens of what you can handle, and in doing so they twist, they distort, and they fabricate stories you mistake for reality. There's a part of you that already knows this. You've felt it before, that sharp pull between what you think and what you feel. Maybe it was the night you sat awake replaying a conversation, certain you'd said something wrong, convinced they were judging you. The next day they smiled like nothing had happened, and for a fleeting second you wondered, was any of that even real? That's the moment most people miss, the moment you realize your thoughts can't be trusted. The mind is a magnificent liar. It's not malicious, but it's manipulative in its own quiet way. It weaves narratives to keep you safe from rejection, pain, and uncertainty. It exaggerates your flaws so you don't get too comfortable. It whispers fears so you won't take risks. It reminds you of failures long buried, pretending it's protecting you from future pain, when in truth it's just imprisoning you inside the past. You see, evolution didn't design the human brain to seek truth. It designed it to ensure survival, and survival for most of human history meant scanning for danger, real or imagined. So when you walk into a room and instantly think they don't like me or I don't belong here, that's not truth. That's an ancient defense system still firing off alarms long after the predators disappeared. But we mistake those alarms for insight. We call them intuition, overthinking, or just being realistic. We trust them because they sound like us. Yet the voice that lives inside your head isn't the real you. It's an echo of everything you've been told, everything you've feared, everything you've lost. It's the sum of past experiences dressed in the language of the present moment. Think about how many times your mind has lied to you. It told you that you'd never heal from that heartbreak, but you did. It told you that you'd never recover from failure, but here you are. It told you that you were unworthy of love, success, peace, and yet you've tasted all three. Every time you believed the lie, life quietly proved it wrong. And yet even now, the mind keeps whispering, maybe this time the fear is real. That's how the trap works. The liar inside your head adapts. It knows your patterns. It knows exactly what tone of voice to use to sound convincing. Sometimes it takes the shape of self-doubt, sometimes perfectionism, sometimes guilt. It doesn't always shout, it just waits. It waits for you to be tired, lonely, uncertain, and then it slips in softly saying, don't try that, you'll fail, or they don't really care about you, or you're not good enough yet. And because it sounds so familiar, you listen, you nod, you obey. But what if I told you that voice isn't a prophet, it's just noise? What if every thought, every self-critical whisper, every assumption about what others think, what if it's just static from a brain trying too hard to protect you? Because that's what the brain does best. It protects even at the cost of peace. It prefers the known misery over the unknown freedom. So it creates illusions of control, rewriting reality to keep you small, predictable, safe. But in doing so, it blinds you to the truth that you are infinitely more capable than you believe. Stop for a moment and imagine this. Your mind is a storyteller sitting by a fire, weaving tales about your life. But it's drunk on fear and memory. It doesn't report the truth, it dramatizes it. It edits out the calm and highlights the chaos. And then, like a fool, you wake up every morning and listen to its stories as if they were gospel. You let them dictate how you feel, who you trust, and what you believe about yourself. There's a word for that, hypnosis. And the one hypnotizing you is your own mind. We live hypnotized by thought. We let opinions that don't exist become truths we suffer by. A glance becomes rejection. A delay becomes failure. A silence becomes betrayal. All because the brain fills empty space with worst-case scenarios, and you call it thinking. Most of what you believe about yourself isn't real. It's conditioning, old echoes from parents, teachers, heartbreaks, and moments that left a mark. They live in your neural pathways, firing automatically, pretending to be you, but they're not you. They're recordings, memories replaying themselves. Have you ever noticed how your mind never shuts up? It's always narrating, analyzing, judging. And if you really listen, you'll realize that the majority of its dialogue is repetitive, recycled, anxious. It's not creativity. It's survival mode, on loop. It's a defense mechanism disguised as identity. So what happens if you stop trusting your thoughts? At first it feels terrifying, like cutting the rope of a hot air balloon without knowing where the wind will take you. The silence feels wrong, the uncertainty uncomfortable. Your mind will fight back, desperate to regain control. It will say you're losing yourself. But the truth is you're finally beginning to find yourself. You begin to see that you are not the storm, you are the sky watching it pass. You are not the thought, you are the awareness behind it. You start noticing the small lies as they arise. I can't do this. Pause. Is that true? Or is that fear speaking? Slowly you learn to witness the liar without becoming it. And in that witnessing, something shifts. The thoughts lose their grip. The narrative loses its power. You start making choices not from fear but from presence. You start realizing that the world doesn't hate you, your thoughts do. The world doesn't reject you, your fear does. The universe isn't against you, your mind just interprets uncertainty as danger. And when you see through that illusion, you begin to live again. There's a stillness that arrives when you stop believing every story your mind tells. You begin to see life directly, without filters, without predictions, without fear. You start to understand that peace doesn't come from controlling your thoughts, but from no longer identifying with them. Imagine walking through life without the constant inner commentary, without the judgment, without the endless rehearsals of what could go wrong. Imagine hearing a thought like, "You're not enough," and simply responding, "That's not me." That's freedom, not from the world, but from the liar within. You will still think, of course. You can't stop that. The mind was made to think, just as the heart was made to beat. But the difference is, now you'll know the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of awareness. You'll recognize the manipulation. You'll smile when your brain tries to protect you from imaginary dangers. The mind will whisper, "Don't do it, you might fail," and you'll reply, "That's one story. Let's see what really happens." That's how the grip breaks, not with war, but with understanding. You don't silence the liar by shouting back. You silence it by not reacting, by watching it come and go like a passing shadow. You stop feeding it with attention, and slowly it dissolves. But beware, the mind doesn't surrender easily. It will disguise its lies as truth, even as wisdom. It will use your past against you, reminding you of every scar, every rejection, every regret. It will say, "You've always been this way. People never change." And that's the ultimate lie, because change doesn't happen in thought. It happens in awareness. In the quiet moment you see the lie clearly and choose not to believe it this time. That's where real power lives. Not in thinking better thoughts, but in realizing you are not your thoughts at all. And that realization, that single crack in the illusion, is the beginning of liberation. When you reach that space, life starts to feel lighter. You begin to notice beauty again, not as something to analyze, but as something to experience. You start responding to people instead of reacting to assumptions. You start hearing silence as something holy, not empty. And then perhaps for the first time, you realize that the voice that was narrating your life was never the author. It was just noise in the background. You start living in the pauses between thoughts, in the quiet space that used to scare you. That stillness, once mistaken for emptiness, begins to feel sacred. It's where truth hides when the noise dies down. It's where you begin to meet yourself again, not the self your thoughts have constructed, but the one that's been waiting patiently beneath all the noise, the self that simply is. You'll notice something strange once you begin seeing your thoughts for what they are. You stop reacting to them, and they lose their sharpness. The judgments soften, the anxieties lose their grip. It's as if the volume knob of your inner critic begins to turn itself down. You start observing your thoughts like passing cars on a quiet street. They come, they go, and none of them have to take you anywhere. But here's what makes this journey both beautiful and cruel. Awareness doesn't erase pain, it reveals it. When you stop trusting your thoughts, you also stop hiding behind them. And beneath all that chatter, you find the unprocessed emotions you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The grief you never felt, the anger you never voiced, the fear you never admitted. For years your mind used noise to protect you from silence, because silence would have made you feel it all. Now as you sit with yourself, the emotions begin to surface. It's raw, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. And for the first time you begin to sense that maybe truth was never found in thinking, it was always in feeling. You begin to remember things differently. You recall moments you once labeled as failures, and now they look like lessons. People you thought were enemies, you begin to see as teachers. You realize that every painful thought your mind weaponized against you was once born from fear, not evil. Even the liar inside your head was just trying to protect you from heartbreak, but fear doesn't know the difference between danger and growth. It calls both a threat. And so for years it convinced you to stay small, to hide, to avoid risk, to seek comfort, to never step into the unknown, because the unknown was too similar to pain. But now you see the truth. Comfort never protected you, it only numbed you. There's a point in every awakening where you stop being angry at your mind for lying to you. You start to understand it. You realize it was never your enemy, it was your frightened guardian. It lied because it didn't trust you to survive the truth. But now you do. And that's when the relationship changes. The mind stops being the master and becomes the servant. You begin to use thought intentionally, instead of letting it use you. You no longer chase every idea that arises. You choose which ones to give life to. You start designing your inner world with awareness, choosing thoughts that reflect the truth, not the trauma. You wake up one morning and realize that peace isn't the absence of thought, it's the absence of attachment to thought. You still hear the noise, but it no longer defines you. A dark thought might pass by. You're not enough, it says. You smile. You know it's a ghost. You've met that ghost before. And now you simply let it pass through you without believing its story. That's what liberation feels like. Not a dramatic explosion of light, but a gentle, quiet detachment. You become spacious inside. You begin to listen differently. To others, to yourself, to life. You start to trust the silence more than the noise. And slowly, you begin to notice how your reality changes. Not because the world outside has shifted, but because your perception has. The same situation that once triggered panic now feels neutral. The same silence that once screamed loneliness now feels peaceful. The same doubt that once stopped you now becomes curiosity. You realize that your thoughts never defined reality, they only painted it. And now that you've stopped trusting them blindly, you finally see the canvas underneath. It's strange, you don't lose your thoughts when you wake up, you lose your identification with them. You realize that the thinker and the observer are not the same. One reacts, the other watches. The thinker is loud, emotional, dramatic. The observer is silent, calm, patient. And as the observer grows stronger, the thinker starts to calm down like a wild horse, realizing it's finally being guided by gentle hands. You'll still fall back sometimes. The liar will still whisper. On the days when you're tired or hurting, it'll try to convince you again. You've lost it. You're not enough. You've failed. But now you know the trick. You don't argue. You don't resist. You just watch. And in that watching, it fades. Every time you see through it, the illusion weakens. And eventually the liar doesn't need to speak so loudly anymore, because you've learned to listen without obeying. This is the quiet revolution no one talks about. It's not glamorous. There are no fireworks, no dramatic revelations, just a gradual awakening, a soft, steady remembrance that you were never broken, never trapped, never small. You were simply lost in the noise of your own mind. And when that noise begins to quiet, the world feels different. The colors look richer. Time slows down. You find joy in things you used to overlook, the way sunlight touches a wall, the rhythm of your own breath, the kindness in a stranger's eyes. You begin to feel life again, not as something to understand, but as something to be lived. Because once you stop trusting your thoughts, you start trusting something deeper, awareness itself. You realize you don't need to know everything, predict everything, or control everything. You just need to be here fully, honestly. And when that happens, the liar loses its final weapon, fear of the unknown. Because now the unknown doesn't scare you anymore. It feels alive, open, full of possibility. You finally understand that truth was never something to be found, it was something to be felt in this moment, and only this moment. So the next time your thoughts whisper a lie, you're not ready, you'll fail, you're unworthy. Smile at the voice, thank it for its concern, and then take a step forward anyway. Because that step taken in defiance of fear is the most honest thought you'll ever have, and maybe that's the point. Not to silence your thoughts, but to rise above them. Not to escape the mind, but to reclaim it. To live, not as a prisoner of your inner stories, but as the author of your own awareness. Because somewhere beyond the noise, beyond the whispers and the fear, there's a still, quiet truth waiting for you to hear it. You are not your thoughts. You never were. And the moment you finally believe that, even for a breath, you'll realize the liar has no voice left to use. The silence that follows will not be empty. It will be you,